We're now recording. Okay, hello everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Okay, let's see what we're going to talk about today. Oh, first we have questions. Okay. Who has a question? Wow. Look at the chorus of hands that have shot up into the air. You all have questions. So amazing. Hold on, you have a question or are you just raising your hand?
Yeah. If I remember correctly, there's a ship, Israeli ship, that was attacked or bombed or something, and then Iran claimed it wasn't them. Is that true? Or
I didn't see Iran say it wasn't them.
I
I
just read something.
what?
I read something about that in the J Post.
Right. So Iran, an Israeli ship flying under a Panamanian flag for God knows what reason, probably so it didn't get attacked by Iran, um, was in a body of water, which the Iranians call the Persian Gulf because they're Persians. The Arabs call it the Arabian Gulf. You might think they're two separate bodies of water. They're not. They're actually the same place with two different names. If you don't like Iran, you call it the Arabian Gulf. If you do like Iran, you call it the Persian Gulf. Most news sites call it the Persian Gulf. I'm not sure why. I haven't really studied it so much. But I am smart enough to know, or knowledgeable enough to know, that they are the exact same body of water. Ships go through this body of water. It's international water. It's not Iranian water. And they're supposed to have safe passageway. A lot of times, Iran makes sure that doesn't happen. They either attack boats, capture boats, or whatnot. There are also mines in the water. Mines are like bombs that sit in the water, and if you go to the wrong place, you hit a mine. This Israeli ship flying a Panamanian flag hit a mine. So it wasn't like people first thought that maybe Iran attacked the boat, but it hit a mine, an Iranian mine, which is just as bad when it comes down to it. They're not allowed to do that, but it wasn't Iran. If Iran hit an Israeli boat, that's a real serious attack. Like that's like, okay, boys, let's start this war. Okay, that would lead to serious war. So that's not what happened. And then Israel decided, well, it had to take action because it couldn't just let this go by. So it put on a light show over Damascus yesterday, last night, and sound show. So with bombs, trying to be funny, but it's way too late for the Israelis on this call. There's only one person not in Israel on this call. Okay, so anyway, so it's pretty ridiculous. But in any case, so there's yeah, so it was a an Israeli ship that got hit by an Iranian mine. And that's what happened. That's what happened. So and Israel retaliated. It's not going to go any more than this. Iran really can't afford a war with Israel. Israel also can't afford a war with Iran. Nobody can really afford to go to war during COVID. Okay, no one's going to win on that one, right? And Iran's not going to win on a war with Israel. Now, in the end of the day, who's going to come out ahead? It'll be Israel. But Israel also doesn't want a war at all. One of the things that Bibi Netanyahu has done, if you look at his record, he has gone the longest of any Israeli prime minister without getting into a war. It's pretty incredible. But if you think about it, for the people on this call, you've never experienced an Israeli war, right? You've only learned about them, right? So that's what you have. You don't really have wars. So we don't want to get into wars. Bibi Netanyahu does not want a war. No one wins from a war. No wars turn out anymore like the 6 Day War, where everybody's like happy at the end of the day and like victorious and we've won land. We can't win in a war. Our war that we go to is not going to end Iran. It's not going to end Hezbollah, right? We're not going to end Hamas. Okay, it's just not going to happen. You know, what it takes to do that is a place we're not ready to go. You'd have to kill tens, if not hundreds of thousands of civilians to do that, and that's not Israel's way. We don't do that, right? You'd have to carpet bomb Gaza to get rid of Hamas and kill men, women, and children, anyone in the way, because Hamas is not sitting on a battlefield somewhere; they're sitting in civilian areas. Hezbollah, you'd have to do. Here's another Israeli kid. Hezbollah, you'd have to. You do the exact same thing, right? Now we got Beit Shemesh on the call. So now you have, okay, right, so you have Hezbollah, which is Lebanon, okay? you have another place where you'd where you'd have to bomb out the entire South Lebanon to be able to do it, and probably huge parts of Beirut. We're not doing that. And Iran, to end Iran's nuclear threat, would also probably require us to kill many, many civilians. Also, a place we're not willing to go. So that's what you have. So no one wants to go to war. I'm almost 100% confident that Iran did not want the Israeli ship hit at all, because it can't lead anything. No one thinks that Iran was able to carry out some super amazing attack on an Israeli ship. It doesn't take much to hit an Israeli. It's not a military ship. It's a cargo ship, right? So it's not hard to hit a cargo ship. It doesn't have any self-defense mechanisms. So what's the point? So in any case, that's the story with the ship. So I assume we've heard the last of it, and nothing else is going to happen from it.
Okay, thanks.
You're very welcome. That's the only questions we have. That's it. Shira Gonsher, do you have any questions? No one's got any questions. This is essentially the Uri Pilachowski Entertain Us meeting, where we do absolutely no effort, and we just hope that you will come up with enough things to entertain us that it's worth us staying up this late at night. And Jordan's like, I don't know what you're talking about. It's 4 p.m. Okay, well, I'll tell you, there's a young lady in Boca Raton named Carol Corn or so, who is driving right now and can't make it, but asked me this question and asked me to record the meeting so she could hear it, and then asked me to address this question. So here's her question. I'm reading it here. Regarding President Biden and his call with Prime Minister Netanyahu, what exactly was talked about / planned for future conversations between the countries? I read somewhere they also spoke with Secretary of State Blinken about a two-state solution, ? I haven't read the news in a few weeks, so I'm a bit behind. And she's just like you guys. Okay, so after they got off the phone, both of them called me immediately. It's very bad when President Biden and Netanyahu call me at the exact same time. Whose call do you take first? Problems. It's so hard to fill me in on what happened on the call and what they discussed. So I decided, because he's older, probably goes to sleep earlier, to take President Biden's phone call first, and then Prime Minister Netanyahu's. So they don't tell you what they talked about on the call. There's something called a readout of the call, which is what they released to the press afterwards, and they say this is what they spoke about. The readout was really lacking in details, but the conversation was pretty long. It was about an hour. I didn't think it would go that long, because frankly, I don't know what they're talking about for an hour. The issues are pretty much well known as to what they're going to be discussing. Okay, they are. You've got the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, where President Biden very much wants to move towards a two-state solution, knowing full well that he's not going to achieve a two-state solution during his presidency. That's not going to happen. He recognizes that fact, but doesn't want anything to happen to make sure that a two-state solution can't be achieved. So he doesn't want either side to do something that would stop a two-state solution from happening. So I'll give you an example. If Israel would extend sovereignty to Yehuda v'Shamron, to Judea and Samaria, to the West Bank, that would end any possibility of a two-state solution. If Israel would build in certain areas in Judea and Samaria, that would end the possibility of a two-state solution. Because if they would build, let's say in E1 is an area right between Hodiah and myself. Okay, so on the highway, when you leave Ma'ale Adumim and head out towards Mitzvah Yericho, that area is called E1. It's a designation on a map. There's a police station there. There's nothing else. The police station was really built by the British. It's on top of a mountain overlooking the highway. There are some Bedouins and a lot of camels, and everyone.
I see that from my window.
What, you can see it out your window?
It's right next to my house. Yeah.
Okay, good. Yaakov,
Okay, Sarah Palin.
What'd you say, Rafi? Rafi say anything? No? Okay.
Nothing.
Okay. Yaakov, are you also in Ma'ale Adumim?
Yeah, I'm right next to Hodea.
Okay, so these guys, they're at the start of E1. I'm a little past E1. I'm a couple of miles, like a mile or two past E1. E1's got nothing in it, and that's how everybody wants to keep it. If we, the Jewish people, would build in E1 and build Jewish housing, what that would do is it would completely cut the West Bank in two. It would bifurcate the West Bank, meaning that if you ever came up with a Palestinian state, it would be split in two with Jews in the middle, which would require either the Palestinian state to be this ridiculous patchwork of cities as opposed to one congruent like land, which would have bridges and tunnels connecting. Like it would be impossible, or the forced removal of Jews, which would be even harder to do. Okay, so so you wouldn't want to have either of those things. Sound familiar? I don't get it.
Well, like the original plan for Israel and Palestine to share land, how Israel would have been two pieces, sort of.
No, I wouldn't have. Not at all. What do you mean? Why? Israel was one congruent land.
Maybe I'm wrong about that. Never mind.
Okay, no problem. And, Palestine would have been Gaza and the West Bank. That might be what you're referring to. I don't know, but this would be even worse. It would be ridiculous. You wouldn't be able to do it. Okay. So that's why the world is very concerned. There are currently plans right now to build an E1 within this year. Okay. And everyone knows that's where Bibi Netanyahu is going to go. If Bibi Netanyahu loses the election, he will chances are lose it to either Gideon Sa'ar or Naftali Bennett. Maybe there's a chance Yair Lapid wins, but if he does, he's got to put Gideon Sa'ar or Naftali Bennett in his cabinet. So, and they are even more right wing and pro building than Bibi. Okay, much more so. So, like that's Joe Biden's. That's his big fear, that Israel will take steps that will prevent the two-state solution from happening. So that's one area that they have to discuss, where Joe Biden says, I don't want you doing anything that's going to prevent the two-state solution. Okay. And then Bibi Netanyahu says, listen, I have to worry because I've got coalition partners that are going to make me do stuff that you're not going to like. And if you put pressure on me and make me look bad, I'm going to lose the election, and you're going to get people that are much more right-wing than I am. Right. So that's how him explaining the political situations and realities to Joe Biden, and Joe Biden saying something along the lines of, don't make any excuses. Don't do anything that's going to put us in an uncomfortable position where we have to criticize you. Right. And that's the message that President Biden gives. Okay. That's one area. The second area, and probably the most important area that they have to discuss, is Iran. Right. What are we going to do about Iran? Okay. Now, this isn't just like President Biden's not hearing this just from the Israelis. He's hearing this from the Gulf countries as well. He knows that everybody is very concerned about what they're going to do about Iran. If they give in too much to Iran, then everybody in this region doesn't feel secure. Keep in mind, Iran is just as much as enemies with Israel as they are Saudi Arabia, who they attack like every 2 days. Okay, the UAE and Bahrain, all of those countries are threatened by Iran. Okay, just as much as Israel. These countries are just as afraid of Iran as Israel is. Okay, so these countries need a security blanket. They need to know that someone's going to take care of them. Okay, to the point where they're ready to say, listen, we don't need the United States of America. We don't have to be reliant on America. Let's conduct our own security cooperation, Israel and the Arab countries together against Iran, and handle this problem. Okay, so that's where President Biden's going to say, listen, I feel the best way going forward is for us to make a deal with Iran. Prime Minister Netanyahu says, well, it depends what that deal is. And last time he made a deal, the deal was really bad for us. We didn't feel confident in it. We thought that it was bad. We thought that was nuclear Iran. So that we can't have that. Yeah. So that's on the extent of their talks. And then I'm sure there's some sort of stuff that they're not going to talk about publicly. And then there's like foreign aid and things of that nature. So by the fact that it lasted an hour, it clearly wasn't just niceties. It wasn't just congratulations on the win. Thank you very much. Good luck on your election. Thank you. It clearly was more than that. But in terms of what exactly was discussed, so I don't know. But those are the flashpoints. When it comes to Secretary of State Blinken, Secretary of State Blinken, first of all, he himself is a tremendous proponent of the two-state solution. Firmly believes that this is the way to go to end the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, but also is a very big realist and knows it's not going to happen while he's Secretary of State. He's not John Kerry, who came to President Obama at the beginning of President Obama's second term, when he was named Secretary of State and said to President Obama, "This is how John Kerry tells the story this way. President Obama tells the story this way. This is like fact." Where President Obama had tried in his first term with Hillary Clinton as the Secretary of State and George Mitchell as his Middle East negotiator to try to end the Israeli-Palestinian conflict through negotiations. He had gotten Prime Minister Netanyahu to have a building freeze. By the way, this is how long Prime Minister Netanyahu has been Prime Minister. He's on his third president. Okay, it's pretty crazy. Okay, and they got Prime Minister Netanyahu to agree to a building freeze. The first Israeli Prime Minister to ever agree to something like that, especially a right-wing Prime Minister. And he didn't, and he held to that for 10 months. He held to that building freeze. And John Kerry came along, and at that point, President Obama was done with the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. He said, it's not going to happen. It's not going to work. And John Kerry said, listen, I can do it. I feel confident. It won't reverberate back onto your legacy. Let me handle this. And Barack Obama felt that it wasn't right for him to hire a Secretary of State and then tie his hands and tell him he couldn't be involved in something that he felt he could do. So he let John Kerry do it, and John Kerry failed abysmally, right? With his famous line now that everybody likes playing the clip. I love this clip because it's such an amazing clip and you can play it over and over and over again because he's so arrogant and such, pardon my language, such a schmuck when he says it. But he sits there and he tells the crowd of world leaders and opinion makers at the Saban Forum that it's absolutely ludicrous for anyone to think that the Arab world will make peace with Israel without a deal with the Israeli Palestinians, and only fools would think that this could ever work. And 2 years later, on the White House lawn, there's the Abraham Accords, and John Kerry has to eat his words forever. Okay, so I can tell you, if I ever get to meet John Kerry, the first thing I can do is be like, do you ever see this clip on the internet? It's awesome. It's you. Look at this. And see what he says. So in any case, because I don't like John Kerry. But in any case, that was John Kerry. Anthony Blinken is not like that. Secretary of State Blinken, first of all, is a very humble man. He's not an arrogant man like John Kerry. And he comes in as a realist. He believes in the two-state solution. But again, keep in mind also that unlike John Kerry, who was a senator along with President Obama and was a much more senior senator to President Obama. President Obama was in one term when he ran for office. John Kerry had been in Congress for something in Senate for something like 20 years and was the chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee. So when you're John Kerry and you're looking at the President of the United States and you're like, this guy is like basically like a rookie at this stuff. I know more, so it's easy for John Kerry to be arrogant and say I can do more. Anthony Blinken was not a senator. He wasn't with Joe Biden. He was Joe Biden's advisor. He's been Joe Biden's advisor for about 10 or 15 years now. So they think alike. They have the same notions, which is probably why he was chosen for the job, because President Biden doesn't have to be concerned if Anthony Blinken's going to go on his own. Not only does he not have to worry about disloyalty, he knows him for 15 years. He knows they've been thinking exactly the same way for so long. He knows they've already expressed their disagreements to each other over and over and over as the years have gone on, and their thinking has molded together. So they know each other well enough. And Anthony Blinken is known to be Joe Biden's chief advisor on national security issues. So there's no concern that and that, by the way, also gives a lot of power to Anthony Blinken. People know that when he goes around the country, so everybody knows he's speaking for the president because he's so close to the president. So when Anthony Blinken talks to his counterpart in Israel, someone named Gabi Ashkenazi, Gabi Ashkenazi could be the foreign minister for the next 15 years if we keep having elections, even though he's not running for Knesset this time. But under a quirk under Israeli law, since right now he's the foreign minister, if there's no new coalition formed, the ministers continue in their jobs even if they're not reelected to the Knesset. So if we have a fifth or sixth election, Gabi Ashkenazi could be the foreign minister for years, even though he will not have been elected to the Knesset in March because he's not running, because he said this was fun. He used to be a general and he went in with Benny Gantz, who was another general. And he said, and then he realized this is not for him. He does not want to be doing this anymore, but he could be stuck with the job unless he quits. And chances are he's not going to quit because that will throw in a whole crisis as to who becomes foreign minister. And Bibi Netanyahu probably will put himself in the position. And that's what will go on and happen. It'll be total chaos forever. So in any case, that's his counterpart in Israel is someone named Gabi Ashkenazi, who everybody knows does not speak for the prime minister because he's the prime minister's rival. Okay, so Gabi Ashkenazi is the foreign minister from the Blue and White Party, which still exists today, won't exist past March, and that's who he has as his counterpart. So when he speaks to him about the two-state solution, it's essentially the same idea that President Biden is saying, which is don't do anything that's going to cause the two-state solution to not be able to happen. Don't take any of those steps that'll cause it to not to happen, because then we'll be forced to do, I don't know what they would do, but then they would be forced to say something and do something. Okay, that's key. Now, one of the big things that's become abundantly clear and has become the focus of a lot of people that watch the U.S.-Israel relationship is that President Biden does not. It's not that he doesn't care. It doesn't care sounds like he's it sounds like it's almost like bad. You know, he cares about Israel. He cares about the U.S.-Israel relationship. It's not a priority of his. And what I mean by that it's not a priority of his, is that there are a lot of crises going on in the world right now. Okay, number one for the United States of America is COVID. Right, America just had its 500,000th death of COVID, and it doesn't seem like things are going to be getting better very quickly. It turns out like they're upping their vaccine production. They just had their third vaccine approved, the Johnson & Johnson. So it seems like they could be catching up to where they're supposed to be maybe by the end of April, is where things could start getting in, looking like a good place. But even then, that's when they get on track for good things. That doesn't mean that like things will be getting better. So that's number one. Number two is he has a troubled economy because of COVID that he's got to somehow repair. And then he's got a whole host of social issues that are very important to the people that elected him that he's trying to install. On foreign affairs, he has Saudi Arabia, which I don't know if he had his speech yet. The White House is about to make a major announcement on Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is one of America's allies, and especially against Iran. But Saudi Arabian leaders are really bad people. Okay, they're really, really bad people. And any metric, if Saudi Arabia wasn't against Iran, okay, we would have them as like some of the worst people in the entire world. These are not good guys. We tend to look at Saudi Arabia and say, okay, Saudi Arabia works with Israel against Iran, so Saudi Arabia is good. Okay, Saudi Arabia is the quintessential, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Okay, Saudi Arabia and Israel are not friends. They're only friends because of Iran. And Saudi Arabia is a really bad country. So what made it very clear to everybody was that there was a horrible anti-Semite who was a reporter. And this reporter was very critical of Saudi Arabia. Okay, now you have to, I don't want anybody to be murdered. Okay, well, so most people, but I definitely don't want reporters murdered. But this guy, if anyone was going to get murdered, okay, this was not a good guy towards the Jews. Okay, he wrote really horrific stuff. By any account, would put him, I'm not saying he was a Nazi, but he would feel perfectly at home with Nazis and in their writings. Okay, if you compare his writings about Israel and about the Jewish people to Nazi writings, it's going to be very hard to find a difference. This was not a good guy. Doesn't mean he should have been murdered. He just wasn't a good guy. Okay, let's keep that in mind. Everybody makes innocent people who are murdered into heroes and righteous people. He was not a hero. He was not a righteous person. He did not deserve to be murdered. Okay, let's put it that way. Definitely did not deserve to be murdered. And the way he was murdered was quite horrific. He's a Saudi citizen. He would never go back to Saudi Arabia because he writes critically against the king, which is illegal. But he was somehow drawn into a Saudi consulate in Turkey. And while he was there, they murdered him and chopped him into pieces. And it seems like the crown prince was not only aware that this was happening, but gave his approval. This obviously upsets a lot of Americans, especially newspaper reporters, right? So newspaper reporters shine a lot of light on this and causes people to wonder, why is America so close with Saudi Arabia when Saudi Arabia kills reporters and chops them into pieces? Okay. Now, in truth, it's a very naive way of looking at things. We're friends, and America's friends with many, many bad countries. Okay, many countries that do not live up to our ideals because it's in our national security interest. America's entire relationship with the Middle East, excluding Israel, is made up of relationships with dictators who are horrific towards their people. Okay, in South Asia, same thing, horrific leaders. But if it suits the national security interests of the United States, so we're friends with them. Okay, that's how it works. We give $1.5 billion to Egypt every year in military aid. Okay, what Egypt does with those arms is horrible to its own people. Okay, horrible to its own people. So it's not like America has white gloves and will only deal with the greatest and most righteous of leaders who are on that share American values. That's very much not true. Okay, very much not true. That's just not how it works. So that being said, you have a lot of leaders that are bad, and people are upset about Saudi Arabia. So the Biden administration feels it has to do something to show the Trump administration did nothing to Saudi Arabia. It covered up Saudi Arabia's crime, covered up the Crown Prince's crime, and didn't do anything. People want to see Saudi Arabia being taken out to the shed and whacked. Okay, that's what people want to see. So America has to do that. But if America does that, it's hurting one of its allies. That's not a good thing. So it's a tough balancing act that Joe Biden has to. President Trump just looked at it and said, well, no, none of my people really care. So I don't really care to do anything because no Republican conservative is going to be like, why are you letting Saudi Arabia off the hook for killing a reporter? They're going to be like, whoa, it's all fake news anyway. At least one of them got what was coming to them. So that was essentially, that's not true. That's an exaggeration. That's not really how the right wing just didn't care. President Trump's people didn't really care about it, and nobody really thought twice about it and didn't expect President Trump to actually do anything. So he did. People expect President Biden to react. So he's going to have to do something. And that's what we're holding with President Biden and what he's going to be doing. Okay. So that's where we got. That was all an answer to Carol's question. Okay. Good. Okay. Any other questions that might have come up while I was going on and on? Rafi?
Hi, good evening. Last week, President Biden ordered his first military strike against Iranian-backed militias in Syria. And last night, when Israel attacked these forces, the State Department's press secretaries didn't deny that there was cooperation with the U.S. forces beforehand, or no, they had knowledge of it. So how does U.S.-Israel cooperation on military strikes and things like that in the region work
So I don't think that much changes. In other words, one thing that President Obama always used to say is that military cooperation and intelligence cooperation increased under his tenure, and that only went up under President Trump. The two countries understand very clearly that they have shared enemies in the region, right? Put everything aside, put all the politics aside, put everything aside. Everybody knows that there are very bad people and very bad organizations and very bad countries in the Middle East, and everyone wants them done. Everybody gets that. And everybody understands that America and Israel are on the same side on these things, right? Now, there might be one or two questions about how best to act and what to do, but everybody understands that we really have the same people that we both hate and we both want done. So they come up with systems and ways of communicating to make sure that our planes don't hit each other, that we're not bombing the same targets, right? But that's on a military level. In other words, when that happens, somebody in the Israeli military calls somebody in the American military or the other way around and discusses things. It doesn't get up to world leaders' attentions. It might be brought in front of them just to make sure. In other words, nobody attacked Syria last night without President Biden's go ahead and without Prime Minister. I mean, no one in the American military attacked Syria without President Biden's sign off, and nobody in the Israeli military attacked without Prime Minister Netanyahu's sign off. Okay, they're signing off on their respective armies' attacks every single time. Okay, those don't go on automatically. But President Biden is not calling Prime Minister Netanyahu to tell him about a military strike, nor is it going around the other way. It's on a military to military level. Okay, that's how it works. So in terms of cooperation, though, that cooperation only gets better and better because as militaries work together, they synthesize their actions better. They figure out better systems to work together, and they get better and better and work better and better with each other. That's how it works. But again, it's not on a leader level. It's not. It doesn't work that way. Now, if let's say Prime Minister Netanyahu would order an attack, and it would be primarily in a civilian area, and civilians in large numbers would die, then that would require leader to leader discussions as to, hey, how did that happen? Was that a mistake? Did you know what you were doing? Is there a reason why? Because there would be a large clamor in the United States as to how that went about. Okay, so that's how that works. Okay. Any other questions?
Hang on, Rafi also had a joke he wanted to share.
No, that's fine. Thanks, Daniel.
Okay. Okay. Maybe we'll end early tonight. Let's see if there's anything we wanted to. Okay, Israeli elections. Let's just talk Israeli elections. Israeli elections are coming up in another 3 weeks. It does not look like anything's really going to change. Most people are just assume, like the experts, I'm not saying like the guy in the street, that we're going to go to a 5th election after this 4th election. It seems very unlikely that we're going to be able to form a coalition. Gideon Sa'ar cannot join a Bibi-led government. It would just be the biggest joke in the world. Benny Gantz did that. He ran against Bibi, said he's not going to join with Bibi, then joined with Bibi because he said we had to because of COVID. And everybody that supported Benny Gantz just like laughed at him. And that's why he went from a party with like 30-something seats to where he's going to get maybe 3-4 seats now, because the only purpose that nobody believed in Benny Gantz. There wasn't even running around going like, I love Benny Gantz. It was more people did not want Bibi. So that's the story in terms of Bibi. In terms of Gideon Sa'ar. Gideon Sa'ar can't join with Bibi. Naftali Bennett could join with Bibi, but who else is going to be in that coalition? That's the question. And can they get to 61 with that coalition? That's a good question. Who knows? So you're really looking at an almost he didn't mention who I'm voting for, right? So truth is, I'll tell you the honest truth who I'm voting for. I honestly do not know. I'm actually very, very torn who I'm voting for. There are a number of parties that all seem just enough repulsive to me for not to vote for them. So I don't know how I could vote for them. And then there are like a few parties that there's obviously a few parties I'm definitely not voting for. But then there are parties that I don't know. I happen to be personal friends with some of the people that could be prime minister. So that's always a draw. Like, wouldn't it be cool if my friend was the prime minister? That would be somewhat cool. Do great for our APAC trips. But like at the same, because nothing would tick off APAC more than, hold on a second, we just had to bring Pilichowski's entire crew backstage to take a picture with the prime minister and hear from him for 5 minutes before he leaves the building, and have everybody from APAC punch me in the head over and over for causing the greatest security problem in the world and everything. So that would be an issue. That's a draw, but at the same time, it's very, very, very difficult. I've lost almost complete confidence that anyone in our government has any idea what they're doing about Corona. It just seems like they have like a spin wheel with like a bunch of crazy different options, and they spin the wheel every week, and they're like, okay, let's do this, and like see if this works. It's like. I mean, like, I'll just give you one example. I mean, everybody here is from Israel except for Jordan, so you all know how crazy this is. But there's some shuls that it's illegal to walk into them, and other shuls you can have 80 people in them. And it's all the same people, it's all the same distance, ridiculous. So I try to follow the law If I don't follow the law, then my whole town goes crazy on me that I don't follow the law. So I'm trying to follow the law, knowing that even if like you're technically following the law, like you're not following the law because no one could possibly follow these laws, because it's like 80 people can go into a synagogue together as long as they're separated by 2 meters each, and are wearing masks and are double vaccinated, and there's less than 15 people that are under 16 years old in the room, and you're like, who's counting this? You know, like by the time you figure out all the rules and you have it all down pat, and you look around, mincha's over. You know, so like it doesn't, the whole thing is like a joke. You know, you can't, and so it's like ridiculous. The closing of the airport is absolutely insane. And then like they close the airports and then tell like there's like, I don't know, a couple thousand Israelis that can't get home. I have a friend she's been stuck in America for 6 weeks. She can't get home, and now they said that they can't vote. Like,
There were a few flights today.
What?
They had a few flights today.
Right. So they have flights, but they're almost impossible to get on because you need some like crazy committee who no one knows. Who turns out we're approving 90% of Haredi requests to come back into the country, but nobody else. So, and then it turns out you need a negative test, and 11 Haredim faked their test and said negative, and then they came on the plane. They were positive for corona as they got on the plane with corona, which is great because it's like a small enclosed area. So they got on and then spent the entire flight boasting about the fact that they had lied on their test, which then it's like the whole thing is just, it's a whole mess. The whole thing's a mess. No one has any confidence, and then but we have vaccines, so that's great. So we have vaccines, so at least like, you know, in America there are no laws and no one has vaccines. In Israel we've got a bunch of laws that make no sense, and we all have vaccines. So so I don't know how you can figure it out. I don't know. But in any case, so Geller asked, you know, I didn't say who I'm voting for. So that I have a feeling that most Israelis are like me. You have your Bibi crowd, which is like you know, Bibi Amelech, you know, and like they won't even consider anybody else. But he's going to be the prime minister forever. My joke is that I'm sure I've said this joke every single time we have these meetings, but at his funeral, he's going to be signing a coalition deal that at Tchiat HaMetim, when the resurrection of the dead comes, he gets to be prime minister again. And it's only a temporary, you know, that he's handing it over to whoever it's going to be. And I just don't see how like he's ever not going to, I don't know. I can't imagine in Israel that Bibi Netanyahu is not prime minister. Like, I just don't, you know, I've lived in Israel where Bibi Netanyahu has not been prime minister. But I just like, you know, it'll be a crazy day when we wake up one day and see that. So I don't know. So no one knows. In any case, the whole point was to give it an election update. And the where I see this going is that that no one really knows, can tell you where it's going. It's an election unlike the other 3 elections, because you have people that now have to stick to their word that they can't be under Bibi. And then you have the Arab parties, who, if they played it just a little smarter, could be the kingmakers, and they can determine the future of Israel, but they refuse to join any coalitions, in which case they have to sit in the opposition. It's really dumb. They could get anything they wanted if they would just decide that they would all join together and join a coalition. But they've never been known to think in practical terms and not ideological terms. So kol kavod to them, and it's probably better for the rest of us. So that's the story. Okay, any last questions before we end? Okay, everybody, next week we might have a surprise, so follow the WhatsApps. I'm about 90% to getting a great surprise for next week. I'm just waiting for a confirmation. Let me check my email. Hold on, let's see. There's a really annoying person that won't return my emails. Or they do, but they wait like 3 days. And did not come. Okay, so I will let you know if I hear anything. Have a great week, everybody. Be in touch.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.